Okay.
Yeah.
Good morning to everyone, and thank you very much for attending this session today and to hear more about the wonderful opportunities in Antigua and Barbuda.
非常感谢各位啊，他是这个安提瓜的投资公民局长啊，那是在此在远端从安提瓜晚上到这边在这边线上连接跟各位解释这个安提瓜的公民项目。
I believe you're all familiar with the Antigua and Barbuda Citizenship by Investment program. So I will just quickly run through the options and then focus more on the recent changes that have taken place in the program.
OK， 在这边的话，投资选择有几个啊？那我们会一个一个大概简略的介绍一下啊。
We at the Antigua and Barbuda Citizenship by Investment program understand the power of choice. So we have carefully designed 4 unique options that match all categories of investors. The categories are National Development Fund, investment in an approved business, investment in real estate, and the newly redesigned University of the West Indies Fund.
OK， 投资项目一共有4个，第一个是政府捐款啊，第二个是创立企业，第三个是投资房地产，再来是这个大学的基金啊，所以这4个我们大家后面都会做详细的解释。
So quickly, we look at the National Development Fund, and this is a one-time contribution to the government of Antigua and Barbuda for a successful application. A single applicant up to a family of 4 is the investment contribution is 100,000. And if you have an application where the number of persons exceed 4, the investment contribution is 125,000.
OK， 这个第一个是政府捐款，政府捐款的话，无论是家庭成员1个人或者4个人，就1、2、3、4个人以内嘛，那就是10万块美金的这个捐款额度。那如果你超过的话，到第5个人或以上就是12万5千美金。
We are excited to share that there are 3 pathways to invest under the real estate option. The first option, the first pathway is purchase of an approved development for a minimum of 400,000. The second pathway, 2 applications can join together with each applicant providing a minimum of 200,000 for the particular unit. And very recently, we have designed the third pathway where 1 person can purchase a unit outright for 200,000.
那购买房地产的方式一共有3种，第一个就是你购买整个这个政府批准的物业40万美元，啊，第二个就是如果你是有2个人一起投资的话，就是合并一起投资的话，那就是1个人20万美元，啊，就是2个加起来凑齐40万美元也是可以的。那第3个的话也是现在因为后续这个政府有降价的关系，所以有一些这个物业啊，他们的投资额也有降低到20万美元，所以单独申请人投资20万美元也是可以的。所以一共有这3种投资模式在房地产上。
This next slide shows you the designated areas that can be used for real estate investment. And if you look, you will notice that on each island, Antigua and Barbuda, the designated areas are mainly waterfront or beachfront. So it's prime investment property that persons are able to access through this program.
那在这个地图上面可以看到好几个点啊，这就是政府所核准这个房地产投资项目。好，那可以看到一个特点，就是这些不管是在安提瓜岛还是巴布亚岛啊，全部都是在面向海边的，都是面向海边的这个项目啊，所以每一个项目都是属于海景的比较高端的这种度假形式的房产。
Next, we look at the investment in an approved business. For a single investor, the minimum investment is $1.5 million US. However, you can have a joint investment with 2 or more investors, but each investor must provide a minimum contribution of at least 400,000, and the total investment cannot be any less than $5 million.
OK， 下一个是这个投资商业啊，就是商业的话，如果是单独申请人的话，需要大概150万美金的这个投资额度。那如果你是投资所有人一起，就很多人一起投资2个或以上的话那最高不可以超过13个人一起进行投资。那每一个人的投资额必须要在不低于40万美金。那所有的投资额加总的话，不低于500万美金。
The applications which have been successful to date using this particular investment option have really been more geared towards real estate. But we have quite a number of opportunities for new businesses. We have agriculture, we have agro processing, we have manufacturing. And so we would like to invite persons to look at these investment opportunities and perhaps utilize this option a bit more.
那当然，在整个安提瓜的国家里面有非常多的这个投资机会包括这个制造业包括农业油业等等，这些都是可以这个投资的这个机会所以也非常欢迎如果客户是想要以这个投资商业的形式来到安提瓜来申请公项目的话，我们有非常多的机会，也有相关部门可以做帮助。
The fourth and final option is in the University of the West Indies Fund. And this really is to support the 4th landed campus of the University of the West Indies on Antigua and Barbuda. Previously, there were 3 other campuses, Barbados, Trinidad, and Jamaica, and we have negotiated with the university to be able to bring the 4th campus to Antigua and Barbuda. This university is in the top 5 percentile of international universities worldwide. So it's a real big deal for us to have this university here in Antigua. So this option was created to support this university.
西印度大学呢，其实它不是坐落在安提瓜的一个大学，它应该说它有很多校区，在之前已经有3个校区了，那它做第4个校区呢，在安提瓜已经展开了它也是已经建造了，开始招生了所以现在他们的话就是借由这个西印度大学基金就是说招募这个大学基金的方式结合这个公民项目来对这个来开放给这个投资人就是说如果投资的10万美金的话。是可以包括整个家庭成员6个或6个以上那这样子在整个除了帮助这个新都大学之外呢，那更是给这个安提瓜政府带来这个算是比较放松的、比较有资金上的收入这样子。
In the beginning of this year, we would have made some changes to this particular investment option. We wanted to make it the most attractive large family option available anywhere. And so we have changed it so that the minimum number of persons who can be included in the family would be 6 persons at the investment amount of $150,000. And with that, a dependent can actually get 1 year tuition free at that campus.
好，那在西印度大学这个上面呢，就是刚刚讲到的就是15万美元嘛，就是说如果客户投资的话，那孩子如果有希望有到西印度大学安提瓜的这个校区去就读的话，是可以给到这个1年的免学费是这个算是这个大学给予的投资人的回馈。
Okay. So we'll briefly look at why you should choose Antigua and Barbuda, because we actually live in paradise and we would like you to call it home.
OK， 那我们这边要稍微介绍一下为什么要选择安提瓜这个项目来做这个投资方法。
Antigua and Barbuda is considered the heart of the Caribbean. We are uniquely and strategically located right in the middle of the chain of islands in the Caribbean. Because of that, we are considered a travel hub because we have daily international flights. Our passport allows us access to over 165 countries and counting. We're constantly looking for additional countries to add to our slate of countries. We have the most attractive offers. We have efficient processing, and we have quite a bit of, we have strong educational opportunities. We actually have an international school here for primary and secondary education. And of course, we have a number of international universities as well.
OK， 为什么选择安提瓜呢？安提瓜它的坐落地点呢是在这个加勒比海这些群岛当中的一个正中央。那这个中央的话，他们就是说，因为这个缘故，他们称它为加勒比海之心。那在这个群岛当中呢，它也因为它坐落的位置可以说是一个地域性的这个港口，所以就是很多从其他国家过来的话，到加勒比海任何一个国家都是要从安提瓜经过的，作为一个交通枢纽。这是一个其中一个原因。再来的话，安提瓜政府他们在这个投资审理上面就是客户这个审理上面其实也非常有效率。那最后就是安提瓜本岛当地有非常多的国际学校，还有这个语言学校等等，其实都是对于投资人如果有想要在当地生活的话，都是对孩子的教育也是有帮助。
Now we get to the real exciting part of the program. We're looking at the recent program enhancements, and all of these enhancements were actually done this year. We are constantly reviewing our offerings and our policies to ensure that we keep the pace of the needs of our clients.
这边讲到的是这个在近期内政府对项目所做的这个加强优化。那以下有很多点就是对于投资人在过去的投资人觉得不方便的地方都做了加强了。
So just to go through them quickly, and then I will go to them in detail. We made the application process electronic, and so persons can now submit applications through our online portal. We've also streamlined the documentation for submitting the applications, particularly because of COVID, and we knew of the restrictions to access of particular agencies that you would need to obtain the documents. So we would streamline the documentation. We've listened to the needs of our stakeholders, and we have brought balance to all of the processing fees. So all processing fees are aligned under all of the options. We've also included a third pathway to acquire real estate, which I would have spoke of before. That's going to allow you to translate, and then I'll go on to the others.
OK， 它项目优化的这个第一点呢，就是我们将所有的这个线上申请的这个过程都线上化。那我们也有这个网站，就是可以查询这个申请的，算是一个申请网络的入口，可以去看这个申请的这个进度。再来的话，对于这个过去比较繁杂的这个文件处理上面，都非常的也做了一定程度的优化，就是减少了这个很多不必要的文件的提供和麻烦。那再来的话，对于这个申请费也有做一定程度的调降。那更重要的就是对于这个房地产项目的取得也增加了一些机会算是扩展这个取得房地产的一个方法。
And we're excited to share with you that persons who purchased real estate or would have invested in a business can now actually resell their property or their shares under the program. We require that they hold on to the unit or the shares for at least the first 5 years. And once you've completed that qualifying period, you're now able to sell the property or the shares to new applicants under the program.
OK， 这个房地产的购买无论你是股权形式买或者是产权形式购买在5年之后就可以自由转售，而且不会影响到自己的程序的公民身份。
We've also made some changes to the restricted countries list. We are now allowing persons to swear their oath in overseas territories. We have also temporarily suspended the requirement for persons to come and visit Antigua for the 5-day visit in the first 5 years. We've expanded the definition of dependents, and we are now facilitating the denial review process electronically. What that means is if you have an application which was denied, there is an opportunity for a review panel to look at you can appeal to the review panel to look at your application with a view to overturning the decision. Previously, persons were required to actually travel to Antigua and meet with the committee in person. And now we are able to offer to persons who would like to utilize this process Zoom or electronic access to the review committee, which means therefore that you're able to have your appeal reviewed in a more timely manner.
OK， 我整理一下啊，就是说在这个安提瓜，第一个就是安提瓜限制的这些，有些国家是被安提瓜所限制，不可以申请公民项目的，他们在这当中也做了一些调整啊。这个跟中国课本比较没有关系。然后再来是这个做这个婚礼宣誓的时候，会在安提瓜当地现在是开放可以到安提瓜的这个以外的其他国家的这个驻外办公室可以做宣誓。那再来呢，安提瓜其实以前是有一个5年内要至少到安提瓜去5天这样子的这个规定就是无论如何呢，在这5年内你一定要去安提瓜当中旅游也好，就考察也好，就是至少要5天。但是现在因为疫情的关系，他们暂停了这个法案，暂停了这个规定疫情的关系暂停了这个规定那再来就是针对这个申请人副申请人的定义也做了这个调整算是放宽了这个要求那最后呢，也是最重要的一点就是说如果你的申请当中有被拒绝的情况以往的这个作业方式是你必须飞到安提瓜当地去做这个上诉去问他为什么去这样子一来一往其实对个人来讲其实也是很不方便的。所以他们现在开放了这个所谓的线上的通道也可以透过像 Zoom 或者是任何Skype 之类的这种形式可以在网络上去面对面的去跟这个官员这边去跟这个政府这边去进行交涉。
Let's look at the online application submission. So we started this project since 2019, where we were looking at an opportunity for persons to submit the applications electronically. We piloted it in January of 2020, so we had a set group of persons who were testing the software for us. And so it so happened that we were able to respond very quickly to the pandemic by instituting this new requirement where you submit your files electronically, because we would have already done the groundwork and tested the portal. So agents can now submit all of the documents electronically through their own unique electronic portal. So it means therefore that we get the application much quicker, so that the process, the application process can start as soon as you hit the button.
在过去申请的时候，在递交申请的时候都是纸本的在递交所以在纸本上面其实有很多的麻烦呢，就是因为你在收集文件的过程，其实包括寄送的时间会延缓到非常多时间所以现在的情况就是说，我们在开放的这个线上递交的情况就可以大大的减去掉很多时间。这同时也是因疫情的变化，疫情的关系而产生的变化。从2019年他们开始着手在建立这个系统，在2020年已经完成了，所以现在一切呢都比以前还要来得更有效率。
When we speak about streamlining the documentation, we really looked at all of the key documents that are needed to start the due diligence process. We know that there were certain key documents that we need to provide in order for us to start the background checks and be able to determine whether the application is successful. Then following that stage, once the application is approved, there were another set of documents that we would have requested to assist with the banking, the transfer of funds and the clearing of the funds in the bank. And once that was completed and we're now ready for the passport stage, there were another set of documents that were required for that stage. We have been getting positive feedback about how we've streamlined those submissions so that you do not have to wait until you have all of the documents to submit your application. We can start with the key documents and then it helps the application to be processed a lot more quickly.
那因为后来这个在文件递交上面已经建立了一套系统了，就是说你不必一次性的把所有的文件都已经整理起来，变成一个打包的形式了，因为它是在线上进行递交的，所以如果你有什么你就上传什么。那这样在这个情况下，其实对客户的这个准备文件上面也是大大的减去了很多时间。那可以就是说你就不用说还要等待，为了等待某一个还没有申请出来的文件，然后就等了很久。那等了很久之后，你还要去用这个实体邮件的方式去寄送，所以在这一点上面算是给了这个客人啊，给政府很大的一个方便。
So we listened to feedback from our stakeholders, and we would have brought a balance to all of the processing fees. So all of the processing fees are now aligned. Prior to this change, the NDF, the processing fees for the NDF was $25,000, and for the real estate and investment in business, the processing fees were $50,000. Through consultation with the stakeholders, we realized that it would probably be more advantageous or more attractive, more helpful to the applicants if we had balance or alignment across all of the processing fees. And I'd just like to point out that the university option does not have separated processing fees. The processing fees are included in the investment amount.
对，然后过去一段时间这个房地产跟捐款他们政府所要求的这个政府费用其实都不太一样。那么现在呢，就一律调价，就改调成这个3万美金了。之前是5万，现在改成3万美金的，算是调价。好，那包括在这个刚刚提到新都大学基金呢，也包括在下面。
Then we look at the third pathway to acquiring real estate. We spoke of one applicant, a single applicant, well, even a single family can purchase a unit outright for $200,000. We know now that there are a number of developers who are working on creating units at that price point. Most of the units available currently on the market are at the $400,000 and higher levels. But we know that there are certain developers who are working on providing units at this price point so that persons are able to purchase these units at $200,000. And as I said, we're happy to indicate that you can resell after you've held your real estate for the first 5 years. You can resell your property under the program.
在之前的话，房地产原本是40万美元起跳但是在近1年的时间，他们有调价成20万美元。好，那对于这个原本就已经40万美元的开发商来讲，这样子有公平嘛，所以他们就开放了，就是说你可以合并起来，2个人一起购买，就是一个人只要付出20万美元就可以申请这个公平计划。当然后续新的这个房地产开发案，我觉得就是以20万美元为单位来做购买的。这个也是可以的，所以特别去强调这件事情所以另外这里也因为这个调价的形式，也增加了很多这个新的这个物业开发机会到安提瓜来这个就等于吸引了很多开发商，但同时也吸引了很多客人。
We've also modified the restricted countries list. We have been monitoring world developments, and we've realized that the risk associated with Iraq has decreased. And so we have since removed Iraq from the restricted countries list. We've also determined that we can further enhance the restricted countries list by allowing applicants who were born in the countries that are currently on the restricted countries list can actually submit applications once they are residing in any country except for those that are on the restricted countries list. Prior to this change, the persons born in countries on the restricted countries list could only reside in 7 countries. Those were the UAE, Saudi Arabia, the UK, Canada, the US, Jordan, and I'm forgetting the last one. But I think it was really proactive of the government to see it fit to ensure that persons who are, once they're residing outside of that particular country on the restricted countries list, that they have an opportunity to apply.
对啊，那如果这个是限制国家清单啊，他们把伊朗从这个限制不能这个申请公民项目国家清单给移除了。然后同时呢，在有一些情况下是说，有些小孩子在这些国家清单当中出生的，但是这个对他们来讲是一个原罪啊，所以其实这个也比较对他们来讲比较不公平的情况。他们如果在，但现在有一个解决方法是，如果他们在其他国家呢已经取得这个永久公民权嘛，那他们会有一个清单啊，这个其他取得永久公民权的情况下，他们也是可以被剔除掉这个限制国家清单啊，也就是说，他可以不需要因为这个原罪不能申请。
The pandemic has caused us to be a lot more flexible. And one of the ways we are showing our flexibility is by allowing our citizens to be able to swear their oath outside of Antigua and Barbuda. Currently, we have 2 designated overseas missions that can facilitate the swearing of the oath. They are the High Commission in London and the OECS mission in Morocco. Because of the lockdown in England, the facilitating oaths at the High Commission in London are temporarily suspended. We expect that to come back on stream by January 2021. And we're also working with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to be able to open up additional offices very shortly so that there are more overseas missions that are allowed to facilitate the oath, which means, therefore, that you don't have to travel to Antigua to swear your oath.
好，那这个宣誓效忠的这个过程，其实以前是在安提瓜需要去做的啊，但是现在不需要了。现在基本上在安提瓜很多其他国外的这个办事处呢，就是像他提到的这个伦敦高级官员公署啊，或者是这个东加勒比海这个办事处啊，在摩洛哥啊，最近都开了新的这个办公室啊。当然这个只是新的，那其实在世界范围内有非常多的地方都可以直接做学士嘛。所以在这个情况下呢，基本上算是政府对客人做的一个开放，就是说你不需要在安提瓜当地去做这个学士。
Okay. Because of the restrictions in travel brought on by the pandemic, the government has actually announced that they have suspended the requirement for persons to visit Antigua in the first 5 years in order for them to renew their passport. This suspension is up until August 2021, and I imagine that at that time the government will review this requirement. But currently, because we know that there is some restriction with persons being able to move around freely, the government has suspended the requirement for you to visit Antigua.
好，那这个5年住满5天的这个规则呢，现在因为疫情的关系要暂时的终止了。但是他们一开始的法案直到2020年底，好，但是2021年啊，这个预计这个疫情还不会消失嘛，所以他们预计应该还是会再延续下去。好，不过这个就是等政府的这个正式的公告为主。
And as recent as 1 week ago, we're pleased to announce that the definition of dependence has been expanded. You can, of course, include your current spouse. If you have children, you can include them in the application up until they're 30 years old and they're financially dependent. There's no longer the requirement to show that they are enrolled in an institution of learning. As long as they're financially dependent on the applicant, they can be included in the application.
OK， 再来就对于这个受抚养人的定义啊，就是从孩子的定义变成0到30岁之间啊，只要你是这个在财务上面啊，就是受抚养人所资助的话，其实就是可以包括在里面。啊，以往的话是要提供这个在学证明的，但是现在取消这个在学证明的要求。
We've also decreased the age of the parents and grandparents who you can include in your application. So previously, the minimum age was 58. We've reduced it to 55 years, and that the parent and grandparent only need to be financially dependent. There's no longer the requirement for them to actually live with the applicant.
OK， 那现在的话，这个父母的这个年龄也调降，因为这58岁现在变成55岁了。那只能够确保说这个父母呢，他也是在经济上面受抚养人所资助的，那基本上也是可以包括在里面的。
You can now include your unmarried sibling. So you're an applicant, you have a brother or a sister who is unmarried, you can include him or her in the application. And if your spouse has an unmarried sibling, this sibling can also be included in the application. That's brand new.
OK， 所以这个是最新的，就是关于你的兄弟姐妹。如果兄弟姐妹是没有结婚的情况下，是可以包括在里面的，包括在这个附申请人里面那甚至是这个配偶的兄弟姐妹也可以包括在里面。
Then you can also add your spouse at a later date. If you submitted your application when you were unmarried, subsequent to your approval, you can add your spouse. The fee to add that spouse has been reduced from 75,000 to 50,000. Also, if you were married to one individual when you submitted your application and you've since divorced and remarried, this new spouse can also be added at a fee of 50,000.
OK， 那这个情况就是说，如果你现在是单身的情况下，你去申请，那你未来结婚的话呢，也是可以包括在里面。包括你现在有结婚，但是你未来如果更换配偶的话，这个更换过的配偶呢，也可以包括在里面的。所以包括你接下来的下一代其实也都可以一并的这个申请。
If your child is included in your application, perhaps your child was unmarried at that time, later on you can add the spouse of that child once the child remains financially dependent on the applicant.
OK， 那这个假设你现在是单身那你将来结婚之后，你所生的这个小孩，那只要这个小孩呢也是在这个在经济财务上面呢是受抚养人所资助的情况下，也是可以一并申请的。
And I'm really pleased to advise that you can now add your grandchildren. This is a question that we have received many times over the years, and I'm really happy that the government has agreed to allow grandchildren, meaning children of your dependents can now be added to the application.
OK 所以接下来这等于是说对于这个投资人来讲这是一个比较方便的这个选项。因为以前对于孩子未来的孩子还有兄弟姐妹以前都是没有的，所以现在的话，只要增加少少的费用，在这个屏幕上看到的就都可以以这个申请费的形式来帮助这个额外的申请人来做申请。好，今天我们就到这里谢谢。
Hi, thank you, Charmaine.
No problem.